The day my parents finally called me for help, I was in the middle of debugging code for a $1 million project. Funny how they only remembered my number when their golden child's mistakes caught up with them. I'm Vivienne, and I've spent 31 years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the boring one, the one who wasn't Colin. Honey, we need to talk. Mom's voice trembled through the phone. It's about the house. I knew exactly what this was about. Colin's latest revolutionary startup had crashed and burned, taking their home equity loan with it. I'd warned them 6 months ago when they'd mortgaged their house to fund his brilliant idea for, I kid you not, an AI-powered toaster that could predict your breakfast preferences. How bad is it? I asked, though I already had a figure in mind. 100,000, Dad chimed in from what must have been speakerphone. The bank? They're starting foreclosure proceedings. I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the Seattle skyline through my window. And Colin? He's trying his best, sweetie. Mom jumped to his defense. These things happen in business. You know how innovative minds work. No, Mom. How is Colin planning to fix this? Silence. Of course. I closed my laptop and grabbed my keys. I'll be there in 30 minutes. The drive to their suburban home felt like traveling back in time. Past the elementary school, where Colin's mediocre art always made the bulletin board while my perfect math scores went unmentioned. Past the high school where they attended every one of his football games but missed my valedictorian speech because he had a big game that day. They were waiting on the porch when I pulled up. Mom was wringing her hands, Dad looked defeated, and there, sprawled on the porch swing like he didn't have a care in the world, was my brother, Colin. Sis! He bounded up with that trademark grin. You're not gonna believe it, but I've got another idea that'll make this all worth it. Stop talking. I brushed past him into the house, setting my bag on the kitchen counter. Show me the paperwork. Mom scrambled to get the foreclosure notice, while Dad made coffee nobody would drink. Colin followed us in, his girlfriend Destiny trailing behind him, phone permanently attached to her hand. It's really not as bad as they're making it sound, Colin said. The algorithm was solid. We just needed more time. The algorithm told people when they wanted toast, I cut in. It wasn't exactly curing cancer. You never understood the vision, Destiny piped up, finally looking up from her phone. Colin's ideas are ahead of their time. I bit back a response as Mom spread the papers on the counter. The numbers were exactly what I'd expected. Worse, actually, with the late fees. I could cover it, but that would mean liquidating most of my investments. We wouldn't ask if we had any other option, Dad said quietly. We know how hard you've worked for your money. For the first time, they noticed my success. Funny how that worked. Remember when I wanted to go to MIT? I asked, scanning the documents. You said we couldn't afford it, that I should be practical and go to state school. Vivian, that was different, Mom started. Was it? Because you remortgaged your house for Colin's toast robot, but you couldn't help me with tuition. I looked up at them. I paid my own way, every semester, every book, every meal. You were always so capable, Mom said, like it was a compliment. You didn't need our help. No, I agreed. I didn't, and I don't think you need it now either. I stood up, gathering my things. Their faces fell in unison. Wait! Dad called out as I reached the door. Please, we'll lose everything. I turned back, seeing them all there. Mom close to tears, Dad looking small, Colin with that hint of entitlement still in his eyes, Destiny recording everything for who knows what reason. I'll help, I said finally. But we're doing this my way. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork tomorrow. The relief on their faces was instant. They didn't even ask about the terms. They never did, with Colin's ventures. Why start now? As I drove home, I called my friend Cassandra. Remember that conversation we had about karma and contract law? I need a favor. The family finally called, she asked. They did, and they're about to learn that responsibility comes with a price tag. I smiled as I merged onto the highway. A very specific price tag. Cassandra's office always smelled like leather and lavender. She'd made partner last year, and her corner office reflected it, all gleaming mahogany and floor-to-ceiling windows. As I settled into one of her visitor chairs, she pulled out a legal pad. So, you're finally doing it, she said, uncapping her pen. The house play we talked about. They handed it to me on a silver platter. I pulled out the foreclosure notice. They need $100,000 to save their house. I have it. But I want more than just their gratitude this time. You want the house. Cassandra didn't phrase it as a question. I want control. They've spent 30 years making decisions that benefit Colin at everyone else's expense. Time to change the game. She started writing. We'll need to structure this carefully. Make it ironclad, but not obviously predatory. Something they'll sign without thinking twice. They never think twice when it comes to Colin, I said. Why start now? For the next hour, we crafted the agreement. It was beautiful in its simplicity. I'd pay off the loan, but the modified lien would add me to the title. One signature, and I'd own 1/3 of their home. Another clause buried in the middle would trigger full transfer of ownership once the debt was cleared. They won't read this carefully, Cassandra warned. Are you sure you want to go through with it? My phone buzzed. A text from Colin. Thanks for helping the parents out, sis. BTW, got another idea to run by you later. This one's guaranteed money. I showed Cassandra the message. She nodded and kept writing. The next morning, I met my parents at their bank. Mom was wearing her Sunday best, like she always did for important occasions. Dad had actually ironed his shirt. They both looked relieved to see me. Where's Colin? I asked, noting his absence. Oh, he had an important meeting with some investors, Mum said quickly, for his new project. Of course he did. I set my briefcase on the loan officer's desk. Shall we begin? The loan officer, a tired-looking woman named Janet, spread out the documents. I've reviewed the modified agreement your lawyer sent over. Everything appears to be in order. I watched my parents' faces as Janet explained the terms. They nodded along, barely listening, their eyes fixed on the number at the bottom of the page, the number that would save their home. So, Vivian will be added to the title? Dad asked, but his tone suggested he didn't really care about the answer. Yes, as a co-owner, Janet confirmed. And there are some additional terms regarding future ownership transfer based on the loan satisfaction. Mom was already reaching for the pen. That's fine, that's all fine. You're family, after all. I almost laughed at that. Family. Right. Just sign here, here, and initial here. Janet pointed to the marked spots. Their signatures were quick, eager. They didn't even skim the pages. Just like they never questioned Colin's business plans or bothered to read those investment prospectuses. I signed last, my hand steady. With each stroke of the pen, I felt lighter. Congratulations, Janet said, stamping the final page. The transfer will process today. The foreclosure proceedings will be halted immediately. Mom hugged me, tears in her eyes. Thank you, honey. We'll pay you back somehow, I promise. No need, I said, tucking my copy of the documents into my briefcase. Consider it an investment in my future. Dad squeezed my shoulder. We're lucky to have such a responsible daughter. As we walked out of the bank, Mom was already on the phone with Colin, telling him the good news. I heard his voice through the speaker, loud and celebratory, probably already planning his next venture. Dinner tonight? Mom suggested, hanging up. To celebrate? Colin and Destiny can join us. Sorry, I have plans, I said, checking my watch. Work dinner, you know how it is. They didn't, actually. They'd never really asked about my work, my success, my life. Back in my car, I took a moment to breathe. Then I called Cassandra. It's done, I said. How do you feel? I looked back at the bank, where my parents were still standing, probably planning how to tell their friends they'd avoided foreclosure. They'd spin it into another story about resilience, about family coming together. They had no idea what was coming. I feel like I just bought the most expensive revenge in history, I said. And it was worth every penny. You wanted me to save the house? I muttered to myself as I started the engine. It's mine now. 6 months passed in a blur of overtime and side projects. Every extra dollar went toward paying down that loan, while my parents acted like everything was back to normal. Tonight was another family dinner I couldn't avoid, Mum's birthday. I arrived late, coming straight from my consulting gig. The driveway was already full with Colin's new Tesla, because apparently bankruptcy was no reason to drive a modest car. There's my responsible girl, Mom called out as I entered. She was wearing a new dress, probably another gift from Colin. He always bought expensive presents with other people's money. The dining room was a snapshot of everything wrong with our family. Mum and Dad beaming at Colin while he gestured dramatically, describing his latest venture. Destiny recording everything for her social media, adding filters to make the modest dining room look more aesthetic. And me, still in my work clothes, clutching a practical gift card I'd actually paid for myself. Vivienne, you won't believe what your brother's working on now, Dad said, practically glowing. Tell her, son. Colin leaned back, running a hand through his expertly styled hair. It's a revolutionary dating app that uses zodiac signs and cryptocurrency. That sounds fascinating, I cut in, setting down my bag. Mom, happy birthday. Oh, thank you, sweetie. She took the envelope without opening it, but let Colin finish. This could be the next big thing. I caught Destiny smirking behind her phone. She'd been dating Colin for 3 months and had already mastered the family dynamic. As I was saying, Colin continued, we're calling it Starcoin. Users match based on astrological compatibility, and they can only communicate by sending each other custom cryptocurrency tokens. How are you funding this one? I asked, serving myself some pasta. The table got quiet. Too quiet. Actually, Mom said, brightening, we were hoping to discuss that. You've been so generous with helping us out. No. The word came out sharp enough to make Dad flinch. But you haven't even heard the projections, Colin protested. Destiny's already got influencers lined up to promote it. We're talking millions in potential revenue. Like the toast robot. I stabbed at my pasta. Or the smart socks. Or the cryptocurrency for pets. Those were learning experiences, Mom defended him. Every entrepreneur has failures before their big break. And who paid for those learning experiences? I set down my fork. While Colin was learning, I was working 60-hour weeks, cancelling vacations, turning down promotions that required travel, all to pay off his mess. Don't be jealous just because your brother dreams bigger than a cubicle, Destiny chimed in, finally lowering her phone. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. A cubicle? I laughed. I'm a senior software architect. I lead teams that build actual functioning technology, not astrology-based Ponzi schemes. Vivienne, Mom scolded. It's my birthday. Can't we just have a nice dinner? Sure, Mom. Let's have a nice dinner. Let's talk about how you're planning to fund Colin's next failure. Dad cleared his throat. Well, we thought maybe with the house situation stable now. The house situation isn't stable. I'm still paying off the loan I took out to save your house because of his last brilliant idea. And we're so grateful, Mom said quickly. You know, You'll probably make that money back in no time. You're so good with finances, unlike your brother. He's more of a big picture person." The table erupted in agreeing chuckles. Even Destiny laughed, probably not realizing she was dating a big picture person who couldn't pay his own rent. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "I need to go. I have an early meeting tomorrow." "But we haven't had cake," Mom protested, "and Colin was going to show us his presentation." "I'm sure it's fascinating," I said, grabbing my bag. "Send me the pitch deck. I'll add it to my collection." As I reached the door, Colin called out, "Hey sis, think about the investment opportunity. Family discount." I turned back one last time. They were all there, bathed in dining room light, looking like a perfect family photo. Mum in her new dress, Dad with his proud smile, Colin holding court, Destiny documenting it all. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said. "None of you have ever asked me what I do with my cubicle job. Not once. You've never asked about my projects, my promotions, my actual success. Because it's not exciting enough. It's not big picture enough." "Honey," Mum started. "I'll send this month's loan payment on Friday," I said, and closed the door behind me. In my car, I pulled up my banking app. Another $5,000 transfer to the loan account. Another step closer to owning their house outright. They thought I was paying off their debt. They had no idea I was buying their future. The email from my bank arrived on a Tuesday morning. "Loan payment confirmation. Final balance 0.00. I forwarded it to Cassandra with just 2 words. "It's time." Her response came minutes later. "Paperwork filed. Ownership transfer will process by end of day." I should have felt something more. Relief, maybe. Or guilt. Instead, I felt nothing but a calm certainty as I drove to my parents' house. My house now, technically. For what I knew would be an interesting conversation. I found them in the kitchen with Colin and Destiny. They were huddled around a laptop, probably reviewing another doomed business plan. Mom saw me first. "Vivian, we were just about to call you. Colin's got the pitch deck ready for Starcoin, and—" "Actually," I interrupted, setting my briefcase on the counter. "We need to talk about the house." "Oh, did you make another payment?" Dad asked. "You're so diligent with those." "I made the final payment." I kept my voice neutral. "The loan is paid off." Mom clapped her hands together. "That's wonderful. Now we can focus on Colin's new venture. We were thinking of taking out a small business loan." "You can't," I said. Colin looked up from his laptop. "What do you mean, they can't?" "They can't take out a loan against the house," I explained, pulling out the documents. "Because they don't own it anymore. I do." The kitchen went silent. Even Destiny stopped typing on her phone. "What are you talking about?" Mom laughed nervously. "Of course we own the house." I laid out the paperwork on the counter. "Remember that agreement you signed at the bank? The one you didn't read? It included a transfer of ownership clause that activated when the loan was paid in full." Dad grabbed the papers, his hands shaking. This can't be legal." "It's completely legal," I said. "You signed it. All of you did. Check the signatures." Colin stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You tricked them. This is fraud." "No, it's contract law. Something you might want to study before your next startup failure." "Vivian," Mum's voice was trembling. "We're your family. You can't do this to us." "Family?" I laughed. "Was it family when you remortgaged your retirement to fund Colin's pet cryptocurrency? Was it family when you missed my college graduation for his football game? Was it family when you spent my college fund on his first failed business?" "That's different," Mum protested. He needed consequences," I cut in. "And so did you." Destiny was filming everything now, probably already planning the viral sympathy post. "This is so toxic," she muttered. "Like, literally evil." "The house is mine," I continued, ignoring her. "Legally and completely. You can stay as tenants if you want. I'll draw up a lease, market rate rent." "You can't be serious," Dad said, still staring at the papers. "We're your parents, and I'm your daughter, the one you never needed to worry about, the responsible one, the boring one." I picked up my briefcase. "Turns out I learned something from Colin after all, how to execute a hostile takeover." Colin lunged forward, but Dad caught his arm. "You ruined everything," he shouted. "All my investors were counting on this house as collateral." "More investors you lied to?" I asked. "Add them to the list. I'm sure Destiny can make a great TikTok about it." Mom was crying now. "Please, sweetie. We can work something out. We're still family." "Family doesn't exploit family," I said. "But you never learned that lesson, did you? You just kept enabling him, kept sacrificing everything for his dreams. Well, now you've sacrificed your house too." "I'll fight this," Colin threatened. "I'll get lawyers." "Please do," I smiled. "I'm sure they'd love to review your financial history. All those investors you defrauded might be interested too." I headed for the door, then turned back one last time. "Oh, and Colin, your Zodiac cryptocurrency idea? It already exists. It failed last year. But you'd know that if you did any actual research." The last thing I saw as I left was Dad sinking into a chair, the papers crumpling in his hands, while Mum tried to comfort a raging Colin. Destiny was already typing furiously on her phone, probably crafting the perfect victimhood narrative for her followers. In my car, I called Cassandra. "How did it go?" she asked. "About as expected. Tears, threats, guilt trips, the usual." "And how do you feel?" I looked back at the house, my house now, and watched Colin storm out to his Tesla, Destiny trailing behind him with her phone still recording. "I feel like I just closed the most expensive therapy session in history," I said. "And it was worth every penny. The fallout was nuclear. Within hours, Destiny had posted a heavily edited version of our confrontation, painting me as the evil sister who stole her poor family's home. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. 'So toxic! Family is forever! How could she do this to her own parents?' I was at work when Mom's first wave of flying monkeys hit. My phone buzzed with messages from aunts, cousins, and family friends I hadn't heard from in years. 'Your mother is heartbroken,' read Aunt Sarah's text. 'How could you be so cruel?' I muted my phone and focused on my code review until Nathaniel, my team lead, tapped on my desk. 'Your brother's in the lobby,' he said quietly. Security called up. He's making quite a scene." I pulled up the lobby security feed on my monitor. Sure enough, there was Colin, red-faced and gesturing wildly, while Destiny filmed everything. Security was keeping him from the elevators. "Want me to call the police?" Nathaniel asked. "No need." I stood up, straightening my blazer. "I'll handle it." The elevator ride down was surprisingly peaceful. I used those 30 seconds to center myself, to remember every missed opportunity, every dismissed achievement, every time they chose him over me. The lobby was silent when I stepped out, except for Colin's voice echoing off the marble walls. "Where is she? I know she's here. You can't hide behind security, Vivian." I walked straight toward him. "I'm not hiding, Colin. I'm working. You know, that thing some of us do?" He spun around, Destiny's camera following his movement. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Tricking our parents, stealing their house." "I paid for that house," I said calmly. "Every penny of it. While you were launching failed startups, I was working overtime to clean up your mess. They were going to help fund Starcoin. We had investors lined up." "No, you had more people to scam lined up. How many times are you going to do this, Colin? How many times are Mum and Dad going to have to bail you out? At least they love me, he shouted. They've always loved me more, and you can't stand it. The lobby went dead quiet. Even Destiny lowered her phone slightly. You're right, I said, my voice steady. They do love you more. They always have. But love doesn't pay mortgages, Colin. Love doesn't protect retirement accounts. Love doesn't excuse fraud. I'm calling the lawyers, he threatened. They'll prove you tricked them. Go ahead. Call them. Show them your financial records. Explain how you convinced our parents to mortgage their retirement for your failed ventures. Tell them about the investors you misled. I'm sure they'll be fascinated. Security was moving closer, but I held up a hand to stop them. You're just jealous, he spat. Jealous that I have vision, that I take risks, while you hide in your safe little corporate job. I laughed then. Actually laughed. My safe little job? I make 7 figures, Colin. I lead development teams across 3 continents. But you wouldn't know that, because none of you ever asked. You were too busy celebrating your latest scheme to notice I'd already succeeded. Liar. But I saw the doubt in his eyes. Security, I called out. Please escort my brother out, and if he returns, call the police. This isn't over, he shouted as they led him toward the door. Mom and Dad will never forgive you. They don't have to, I replied. They just have to pay rent. As the doors closed behind them, I noticed Nathaniel standing nearby. He'd come down at some point during the confrontation. You okay? He asked. Surprisingly, yes. I smoothed my blazer. Though I suspect that video will go viral by dinner. You know, he said, walking me back to the elevators. I've known you for 3 years. Never knew you had a brother. That's because I never talked about him. Just like they never talked about me. The elevator doors opened. Funny how family works sometimes. Back at my desk, I had 17 missed calls from Mum and a text from Dad. Please, let's talk about this. We can work something out as a family. I opened my email instead and began drafting a formal lease agreement. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, market rate rent for the area. Professional, clean, businesslike, no family discount. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Cassandra. Your brother's girlfriend just posted the lobby video, she said. It's trending. Of course it is. I kept typing. Let me guess. I'm the villain? Actually, she said, the comments are turning. People are starting to ask questions about your brother's businesses, about your parents' choices. The truth has a way of coming out. I finished the lease agreement and hit send. They thought I was their fallback plan, I said. They never saw I became their endgame. The video went viral, but not in the way Destiny planned. Someone dug up Colin's business history, all the failed startups, the angry investors, the pattern of family bailouts. Soon, the comments shifted from toxic sister to entitled brother and enabling parents. Mum tried damage control at church that Sunday. I heard about it from Aunt Sarah, who'd switched sides after seeing the full story. She told everyone you manipulated them, Aunt Sarah reported over coffee. But then Mrs. Peterson, you remember her, the accountant, asked about Colin's businesses. It got very quiet, very fast. I stirred my latte. Let me guess, Mom left early? Practically ran out, but not before people started asking questions about all those loans they've taken out over the years. The truth has a way of snowballing once it starts rolling. By Monday, Destiny's followers were digging up promotional posts for Colin's previous ventures. Tuesday brought screenshots from angry investors. By Wednesday, his LinkedIn profile had mysteriously vanished. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Nathaniel stopped by my desk. There's someone here to see you, he said. Says she's from the Chamber of Commerce. In the conference room, I found Margaret Wells, the Chamber's director, waiting with a folder. Ms. Newton, she smiled. I've been following your situation with interest. The viral video, you mean? Actually, your career. You've built quite a reputation in tech, but somehow stayed under the radar. Until now. She opened the folder. We're launching an initiative for young women in STEM. Mentorship, scholarships, business incubation. We need someone to lead it, someone who understands both success and adversity. I raised an eyebrow. And my family drama made you think of me? Your handling of it did. You turned a personal crisis into a masterclass in consequences and accountability. That's exactly what we need. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Your brother's in trouble. Real trouble. Some investors are threatening legal action. Please, we need your help. I muted the notification and turned back to Margaret. Tell me more about this initiative. We spent an hour discussing plans, possibilities, and funding. By the end, I was intrigued. There's just one thing, Margaret said, gathering her papers. We need a physical location. Somewhere accessible, with enough space for workshops and meetings. I thought about my house, my parents' house, with its large basement and convenient location. I might have something in mind, I said. Later that evening, I was working late when Nathaniel brought me coffee. You missed quite a show in the parking lot, he said. Your brother tried to ambush you again. Security caught him trying to let the air out of your tires. I sighed. Did they call the police this time? Didn't have to. Turns out some of his angry investors were following him. They were very interested in having a chat. My phone lit up with a call from Mum. I let it go to voicemail. You know, Nathaniel said, sitting on the edge of my desk, I grew up with a golden child sister. Nothing I did was ever good enough compared to her dance recitals. How did you handle it? I moved across the country and built my own life. But you... He smiled. You stayed and built something stronger than their favoritism. My email pinged, the Chamber's official proposal. As I read through it, another text from Mum arrived. People at church are asking questions. How could you do this to our family's reputation? I closed the message and opened my calendar instead, scheduling a meeting with a contractor to discuss renovating the basement. They're not going to stop, Nathaniel warned. Family rarely does. No, I agreed, but they'll have to learn new rules, starting with paying rent on time. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Destiny, of all people. Colin's investors are like super mad. Can you maybe help? For family? I showed Nathaniel the message, and we both laughed. You know what the funny part is? I said, turning back to my work. If they'd just treated me like family to begin with, none of this would have happened. Their loss, he said, standing to leave, but the tech community's gain. Those girls in the STEM program are going to learn from the best. After he left, I finally listened to Mom's voicemail. She was crying, talking about family loyalty and forgiveness, and how they'd always supported my little computer jobs. I deleted it and opened the contractor's website. The basement would need new wiring, better lighting, maybe some built-in workstations. A place where young women could build their futures without anyone telling them to dream smaller. My phone lit up one last time, Cassandra sending a link to a local news article. Tech executives' viral family drama sparks discussion about financial abuse and accountability. I smiled and clicked share. The contractor's estimate arrived the same day my parents finally agreed to meet. They chose a coffee shop, neutral ground. Mom looked like she hadn't slept in days, and Dad's hands shook as he stirred his untouched coffee. We've been thinking, Mom started, her voice carefully measured, about what you said, about enabling Colin. I waited, sipping my Americano. Some of his investors came to the house, Dad continued. They were angry, very angry, showed us things we didn't know about, promises he'd made. And, I set down my cup, and we realize now that maybe, Mom's composure cracked slightly. Maybe we made some mistakes. Mistakes. I pulled out my tablet, opening the contractor's plans. Let's talk about mistakes. You mortgaged your retirement 6 times for Colin's schemes. You missed my graduation for his football game. You told me MIT was too expensive while buying him a car for networking purposes. We know, Dad said quietly. We know now, but we can fix this. Just give us back the house, before it ruins your soul. I turned my tablet around, showing them the renovation plans. See this? I'm converting the basement into a tech education center for young women. The Chamber of Commerce is partnering with us. We'll offer mentorship, scholarships, internships. Mom barely glanced at it. But what about family? What about Colin? What about him? His investors are threatening legal action. His girlfriend's influencer career is tanking because she helped him promote fraudulent businesses. He made his choices. We were just trying to do what was best for both of you, Mom insisted. You were always so capable, so independent. I had to be. The words came out sharper than intended. You left me no choice. Every time I needed support, you were too busy supporting him. Every achievement, every milestone, it all took second place to Colin's latest scheme. That's not fair, Dad protested weakly. No, it wasn't fair. None of it was fair. But here's what's going to happen now. I pulled out a folder. I'm creating a living trust for the house. It will fund the education center and provide housing assistance for program participants. Mom's face went pale. But what about inheritance? What about Colin's future? Colin's future is whatever he makes of it. Without your money, without my house, without any more safety nets. You can't do this, Mom whispered. We're your parents. We always tried to do what was best. Best for Colin, I finished. Always best for Colin. Well, now I'm doing what's best for dozens of young women who deserve a chance, who deserve better than being told they're too capable to need support. Dad reached for the folder, but I pulled it back. It's already done, I said. The trust is established. The contractors start next week. You can stay as tenants if you want. Market rate rent, no family discount. But the house will never be yours again, and it will never be Colin's. We could fight this, Mom said, but her voice lacked conviction. We could get lawyers. Like the lawyers currently looking into Colin's business practices? Go ahead. I'm sure they'd love to add parental enablement to their investigation. A notification popped up on my tablet. Cassandra confirming the trust paperwork was filed. I stood up, gathering my things. You said you were trying to do what was best for us, I said. Now I'm doing what's best for me, and for every other daughter who's been told she's too capable to need help. Please, Mom tried one last time. We're still family. Yes, we are, and families have rules, boundaries, consequences. You taught Colin none of those things, so I'm teaching them to you instead. I left them there, Mom crying silently into her cold coffee, Dad staring at nothing. Outside I called Nathaniel. How'd it go? He asked. About as expected. They're still more worried about Colin than anything else. Even with the investors breathing down his neck? Even then. I got into my car. But it doesn't matter anymore. The trust is filed. The contractors are scheduled. It's done. You know what you said about teaching them consequences? He paused. You're going to teach those girls something even more valuable. How to stand up for themselves. I started the engine, watching through the coffee shop window as my parents huddled together, probably already planning how to help Colin out of his latest mess. You said I owed you this family, I muttered, echoing words I'd been holding back for years. Now, you owe me everything, with interest. The renovation plans sat on my passenger seat, a blueprint for something better than family obligation, something built on merit, not manipulation, on earned success, not endless enablement. It was time to build something new. The construction noise from the basement filled the house as I reviewed applications for our first cohort of STEM scholars. 20 bright young women, all brilliant, all overlooked, all reminded me of myself at their age. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathaniel. "News about your brother just dropped. Check your email." The headline was exactly what I'd expected. Local tech entrepreneur faces federal investigation for investment fraud. Below it, a familiar face smiled from his LinkedIn profile photo, still believing he was untouchable. The doorbell rang. Mom stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. "The moving truck comes tomorrow," she said without preamble. "We found an apartment across town. I know. I approved your rental reference." I let her in, watching her take in the changes. The living room was now a reception area, with inspirational posters and a sleek sign reading, "Newton STEM Initiative." "Your father," she hesitated. "He's not doing well. The stress of everything." "You mean the stress of finally facing consequences?" She flinched. "Colin might go to jail." "Yes," I agreed. "He might." A young woman in a hard hat appeared from the basement. "Ms. Newton, we need your input on the workstation layout." "I'll be right there." I turned back to Mom. "Was there something specific you needed?" She pulled out an old photo album. "I found this while packing. Thought you might want it." I opened it to find my academic awards, newspaper clippings about my achievements, college acceptance letters, all carefully preserved. "You kept these?" "Of course I did." Her voice cracked. "You were my brilliant girl. I thought you didn't need me to say it. You were so capable, so strong." "I needed you to show up," I said, closing the album. "Not just keep a scrapbook." The construction manager called up again. "Ms. Newton?" "Keep it," Mom said, pushing the album toward me. "Maybe show it to your students. Show them what's possible." As she turned to leave, she paused. "That article about Colin, will he really go to prison?" "The evidence is pretty clear. His investors are cooperating with the investigation." "And Destiny?" "Turned state's witness. Apparently, she recorded everything." Mom nodded slowly. "You know what the worst part is? I can't even blame you anymore. We did this. All of it." The front door opened, and Margaret from the Chamber of Commerce walked in with a group of potential donors. "Vivienne? Perfect timing. These gentlemen want to see the facility." Mom slipped out as I led the tour, showing them the emerging computer lab, the presentation space, the mentorship offices. Their questions were thoughtful, their checkbooks ready. "This is exactly what the community needs," one donor said, "a place where talent isn't overlooked." After they left, Cassandra arrived with a stack of papers. "Final paperwork on the trust," she said. "Once you sign, it's irrevocable. The house will permanently serve its new purpose." I signed without hesitation. "Your parents' apartment?" she asked. "Signed their lease yesterday. Market rate, no special terms." "And Colin?" "His lawyer called. Wanted to know if I'd testify about family dynamics, paint him as a victim of enabling parents." I smiled. I declined. Nathaniel appeared in the doorway. "Contractors need you again. Something about the wiring specs." Before heading downstairs, I stopped at the new bulletin board. It was empty now, waiting for our first student's achievements to fill it. Next to it hung a single frame, my MIT acceptance letter, finally displayed after all these years. "You know," Nathaniel said, following my gaze, "you could have just sold the house, walked away clean." "This isn't about walking away." I touched the frame. "It's about building something better, something that matters." My phone lit up with a final text from Mom. "Moving truck's booked. Your father wants to know if you'll have dinner with us sometime. Just dinner. No asking for anything." I showed Nathaniel the message. "Will you go?" he asked. Maybe. On my terms this time. The construction manager called up again about the wiring, and I headed down to the basement. The space was transforming. Bright, open, full of possibility. Everything I'd wished for at their age. I didn't burn bridges, I realized. I invested in better roads. They just chose not to travel them. But these girls would. These brilliant, overlooked, capable girls would build their own paths, their own success stories. And this time, someone would be there to support them. The house wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every young woman who needed what I never had, a chance to shine without being told she was too bright. That was worth more than any inheritance.
I take a deep breath as I step out of the car, my hand tightly clasped in Ethan's. The house looms before us, a stark reminder of the years of silence that stretch between Ethan and his father. I squeeze Ethan's hand, offering a reassuring smile. "It's going to be okay," I whisper, though the words feel hollow even to my own ears. Ethan nods, his jaw clenched tight. "Let's just get this over with," he mutters, striding towards the front door. I follow, my heart pounding in my chest as Ethan raises his hand to knock. The door swings open, revealing a man I've only seen in faded photographs. Frank, Ethan's father, stands before us, his face etched with lines of age and bitterness. "Ethan," he says, his voice gruff. "It's been a long time." "Dad," Ethan replies, his tone carefully neutral. "This is Zara, my wife." Frank's gaze shifts to me, his eyes narrowing slightly. "A pleasure," he says, though his tone suggests otherwise. We step inside, the house feeling strangely cold despite the warm summer day. Frank leads us to the living room, gesturing for us to sit. I perch on the edge of the couch, my hands folded tightly in my lap. "So," Frank begins, leaning back in his armchair, "what brings you here after all these years?" Ethan clears his throat, his eyes meeting mine briefly before he speaks. "Zara thought it was time we tried to mend things between us. For the sake of family." Frank scoffs, shaking his head. "Family? You haven't been much of a family to me, boy." I bristle at his words, but Ethan remains calm. "I know we've had our differences, Dad, but I'm here now, aren't I?" Frank grunts, his gaze shifting to the window. "I suppose you are." The conversation lulls, the tension thick in the air. I clear my throat, desperate to break the silence. "Ethan tells me you used to work in sales, Frank. What was that like?" Frank's eyes snap back to me, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "It was a job," he says shortly. "Nothing more, nothing less." I nod, sensing that further questions won't be welcomed. We sit in awkward silence for a few more moments before Ethan stands abruptly. "We should get going," he says, his voice strained. "It's a long drive back." Frank nods, rising slowly from his chair. "Don't be a stranger," he says, though his words lack sincerity. We say our goodbyes, the door closing behind us with a heavy thud. As we walk back to the car, I can't shake the feeling that something is off. Frank's demeanor, his cold reception, it all feels wrong somehow. A month later, the phone rings. It's Frank, his voice tinged with desperation. "I need your help," he says, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm sick, and I can't take care of myself anymore. I need to move in with you and Ethan." I freeze, the phone nearly slipping from my grasp. "Move in with us?" After the way he treated Ethan at our visit, I glance at Ethan, seeing the conflicted emotions playing across his face. "We'll have to discuss it," I say finally, my voice trembling slightly. "Can we call you back?" Frank agrees, and I hang up the phone, my mind reeling. I turn to Ethan, my heart sinking at the look of resignation on his face. "He's my father," Ethan says softly. "I can't turn him away." I nod, knowing that Ethan's sense of duty will always win out in the end. But as we begin to make plans for Frank's arrival, I can't shake the feeling that we're making a terrible mistake. The day Frank moves in, I feel a sense of unease that I can't quite shake. Ethan and I help him settle into the guest room, arranging his few belongings and making sure he's comfortable. At first, things seem to be going smoothly. Frank is polite, even charming at times, and I start to think that maybe my initial reservations were unfounded. But as the weeks pass, I begin to notice little things that set off alarm bells in my head. Frank starts making offhand comments about money, hinting at the financial strain he's under. One evening, over dinner, he finally comes out with it. "I hate to ask," he says, his eyes downcast, "but I'm in a bit of a bind. My late wife, she left me with some significant gambling debts. I don't know how I'm going to pay them off. Ethan's fork clatters to his plate, his face etched with concern. Dad, why didn't you say something sooner? We could have helped. Frank shakes his head, a wry smile on his lips. I didn't want to be a burden, but now, living here with you, I thought maybe. He trails off, letting the implication hang in the air. I glance at Ethan, seeing the wheels turning in his head. We can cover the debts, Ethan says finally, and you can stay here with us, save on living costs. It's the least we can do. I open my mouth to protest, but the words die on my lips. How can I argue with Ethan's generosity, his desire to help his father? So I nod, forcing a smile onto my face. Of course, I say, we're family after all. Frank's face breaks into a grin, and he reaches across the table to clasp Ethan's hand. Thank you, son. You don't know how much this means to me. But as I watch the exchange, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. There's a glint in Frank's eye, a calculating edge to his smile that makes my skin crawl. The next few weeks are a blur of financial discussions and budget adjustments. Ethan insists on paying off Frank's debts in full, even though it means dipping into our savings. I try to voice my concerns, but Ethan waves them away. He's my father, Zara, he says, his voice firm. I can't just turn my back on him. I nod, swallowing my objections. But as the days pass, I start to notice a change in Ethan. He seems distracted, distant, as if he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. One evening, he comes home late from work, his face drawn and tired. I'm in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when he walks in and slumps into a chair. I quit my job today, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I nearly drop the spoon I'm holding, my heart leaping into my throat. What? Why? Ethan runs a hand through his hair, his eyes meeting mine. I want to start a nonprofit, Zara. I want to make a difference in the world. I stare at him, my mind reeling. A nonprofit? Now when we're already stretched thin financially? But before I can voice my concerns, Frank walks into the kitchen, his face twisted into a scowl. A nonprofit? He sneers, his voice dripping with disdain. How are you going to support us on that, boy? You think your little dream is more important than taking care of your family? Ethan flinches as if he's been slapped, his face flushing with shame. I just thought. You thought wrong, Frank snaps, cutting him off. You're being selfish, Ethan. You can't afford to chase your dreams when you have responsibilities. I watch as Ethan seems to shrink before my eyes, his shoulders slumping in defeat. And in that moment, I realize the truth. Frank isn't here because he needs our help. He's here to manipulate us, to bleed us dry and break us down, and I'll be damned if I let him get away with it. The days turn into weeks, and Frank's presence in our home becomes increasingly suffocating. He seems to take pleasure in belittling Ethan at every turn, constantly reminding him of the financial strain his nonprofit is putting on our family. I try to shield Ethan from the worst of it, but Frank's words have a way of worming their way into his mind. I watch as my once confident husband starts to doubt himself, his dreams slowly crumbling under the weight of his father's disapproval. One evening, I overhear Frank talking to Ethan in the living room. His voice is loud, carrying easily through the thin walls. You're a failure, Ethan, he says, his tone dripping with contempt. You think you can change the world with your little nonprofit? You can't even take care of your own family. I feel a surge of anger rising in my chest, and I storm into the room, my eyes blazing. That's enough, Frank, I snap, my voice trembling with rage. You have no right to speak to Ethan that way. Frank turns to me, his face twisted into a sneer. Stay out of this, Zara. This is between me and my son. But I refuse to back down. Ethan is my husband, I say, my voice growing stronger with each word, and I won't let you tear him down like this. Frank scoffs, shaking his head. You don't understand, girl. I'm trying to help him, to make him see the error of his ways. I laugh, the sound harsh and bitter. Help him? By crushing his dreams and making him feel worthless? That's not help, Frank. That's abuse. Ethan looks up at me, his eyes wide with surprise. I can see the gratitude in his gaze, the relief at having someone stand up for him. But Frank isn't finished. You think you're so smart, don't you, Zara? He says, his voice low and menacing. You think you know what's best for Ethan? Well, let me tell you something. I'm his father, and I know what's best for him. And what's best is for him to give up this foolish dream and focus on taking care of his family. I shake my head, my heart breaking for Ethan. You're wrong, Frank. Ethan's dream is what makes him who he is. It's what drives him, what gives him purpose, and I won't let you take that away from him. Frank's face darkens, and for a moment, I think he might lash out at me, but instead he turns and stalks out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I turn to Ethan, my heart aching at the defeated slump of his shoulders. "I'm so sorry," I whisper, pulling him into my arms. "I'm sorry you have to deal with this." Ethan clings to me, his body shaking with silent sobs. "I don't know what to do, Zara," he says, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I feel like I'm being pulled in 1,000 different directions. I stroke his hair, my mind racing with possibilities, and then, suddenly, it hits me. The pieces fall into place, and I realize the truth of what's been happening. "Ethan," I say, pulling back to look him in the eye, "I think your father is manipulating us. I think he's been planning this from the start." Ethan frowns, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" I take a deep breath, my mind whirling with the implications of what I'm about to say. "Think about it. He shows up out of nowhere, asking for money and a place to stay. He guilt-trips you into quitting your job and starting a nonprofit, knowing it will put a strain on our finances. And now he's constantly belittling you, making you feel like a failure." Ethan's eyes widen, and I can see the realization dawning on his face. "You're right," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "But why? Why would he do this?" I shake my head, my heart heavy with the knowledge of what we're up against. "I don't know," I say, "but I intend to find out." The next day, I wait until Ethan leaves for work before confronting Frank. I find him in the living room, lounging in his armchair with a newspaper in his lap. "We need to talk," I say, my voice tight with anger. Frank looks up at me, his eyes narrowing. "About what?" I take a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation to come. "I know what you're doing, Frank. I know you're manipulating Ethan, trying to bleed us dry." Frank's face hardens, and he sets the newspaper aside. "I don't know what you're talking about, Zara. I'm just a concerned father, trying to look out for my son." I shake my head, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. "No, you're not. You're a liar and a manipulator, and I won't let you get away with it." Frank stands up, his face twisting into a sneer. "You don't know anything, girl. You think you can come into my family and start making accusations? You have no idea what you're talking about." I stand my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "I know more than you think, Frank. I know about your debts, about how you've been using Ethan to pay them off." Frank's eyes widen, and for a moment I see a flicker of fear cross his face, but then his expression hardens and he takes a step towards me. "You think you're so clever, don't you, Zara?" he says, his voice low and menacing. "You think you've got it all figured out. Well, let me tell you something. You're right, I am in debt. But it's not from gambling. It's from failed business ventures, investments that went south." I stare at him, my mind reeling with the implications of his words. "So, you've been using Ethan to bail you out? To pay off your mistakes?" Frank shrugs, a cruel smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "What can I say? The boy owes me. I raised him, put a roof over his head. The least he can do is help his old man out in his time of need." I feel a surge of disgust rising in my throat, and I have to fight the urge to slap the smug look off his face. "You're despicable," I spit, my voice trembling with rage. "You're taking advantage of Ethan's love for you, his sense of duty. You're destroying him, piece by piece." Frank laughs, the sound harsh and grating. "Destroying him? Please. I'm making him stronger, teaching him the realities of life, and if he can't handle it, well, that's his problem." I shake my head, my heart breaking for Ethan. "You're wrong, Frank. Ethan is one of the strongest people I know, and he doesn't need you, not anymore." Frank's face darkens, and he takes another step towards me. "You think you can turn him against me? You think you can take my son away from me?" I stand my ground, my chin lifted in defiance. "I'm not taking him away from you, Frank. You're doing that yourself, with your lies and your manipulations." Frank's hand twitches at his side, and for a moment I think he might strike me. But instead, he turns away, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "You don't understand, Zara," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have a plan, a way to get out of this mess. I was going to sell the house, force you and Ethan out. I even turned his sister against you, convinced her to take my side." I stare at him, my mind reeling with the depths of his betrayal. "You monster. I whisper, my voice trembling with emotion. You would destroy your own family just to save yourself? Frank turns back to me, his face a mask of desperation. I have no choice, Zara. I'm drowning in debt, and I need a way out. I shake my head, my resolve hardening. No, Frank, you do have a choice. You can face the consequences of your actions like a man. You can tell Ethan the truth and beg for his forgiveness. Frank's face twists into a sneer, and he turns away from me. I won't do that, Zara. I can't. I nod, my heart heavy with the knowledge of what I must do. Then I will, Frank. I'll tell Ethan everything, and we'll see how he reacts. But one thing is for sure. You won't be staying in this house any longer. Not if I have anything to say about it. The next few days are a blur of activity. I know I need to act fast, to gather evidence of Frank's betrayal before he has a chance to put his plan into action. I start by secretly recording our conversations, hiding my phone in my pocket and letting it capture every vile word that spills from Frank's lips. He talks about his debts, about his plans to sell the house and leave us with nothing. He even brags about turning Olivia against us, convincing her that we're the enemy. It's sickening to listen to, but I force myself to keep going, to gather as much evidence as I can. I know I'll need it if I'm going to convince Ethan of the truth. Finally, after days of recording, I have what I need. I wait until Ethan gets home from work, then pull him aside, my heart pounding in my chest. There's something you need to hear, I say, my voice trembling with emotion. I play the recordings for him, watching as his face goes from confusion to shock to anger. He listens in silence, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. When the last recording ends, he looks up at me, his eyes blazing with fury. I can't believe it, he whispers, his voice hoarse with emotion. My own father betraying me like this. I nod, my heart breaking for him. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I know how much you love him, how much you wanted to believe in him. Ethan shakes his head, his jaw clenched tight. No, Zara, you were right all along. He's been using me, manipulating me, and I let him do it. I reach out and take his hand, squeezing it gently. It's not your fault, Ethan. He's your father, and you wanted to believe the best of him. But now we need to focus on protecting ourselves, on getting away from him before he can hurt us anymore. Ethan nods, his eyes hardening with resolve. You're right. We need to sell the house, move out before he realizes what's happening. We spend the next few days in a flurry of activity, contacting real estate agents and packing up our belongings. We work in secret, but I was careful not to let Frank catch on to our plans. Finally, the day arrives. We found a buyer for the house, and everything is in place for us to move out. I wait until Frank leaves for one of his mysterious errands, then call Olivia, my hands shaking as I dial her number. Olivia, it's Zara, I say when she answers. There's something you need to hear. I play the recordings for her, my heart pounding as I wait for her reaction. At first, there's only silence on the other end of the line. Then I hear a sharp intake of breath, followed by a string of curses. That bastard, Olivia says, her voice trembling with anger. I can't believe I let him manipulate me like that. I feel a surge of relief wash over me, and I let out a shaky breath. It's not your fault, Olivia. He's good at what he does. But now we need to stand together to make sure he can't hurt anyone else. Olivia agrees, and we spend the next hour plotting our next move. By the time we hang up, I feel a sense of hope stirring in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, we can come out of this stronger than ever. The next day, Ethan and I load the last of our belongings into the moving truck and drive away from the house that has caused us so much pain. As we pull out of the driveway, I catch a glimpse of Frank's face in the rearview mirror. He looks shocked, angry, and maybe even a little afraid. But I don't let myself feel sorry for him. He made his choices, and now he has to live with the consequences. And as for Ethan and me, we have a whole new life ahead of us, one free from lies and manipulation. And I know deep in my heart that we're going to be just fine. We're barely settled into our new apartment when the phone rings. It's Frank, his voice tight with anger. What the hell do you think you're doing, Ethan? He shouts, his words slurring together. You can't just sell the house and leave me with nowhere to go. Ethan takes a deep breath, his hand clenching the phone so tightly his knuckles turn white. It's done, Dad. The house is sold, and we're not coming back. Frank lets out a string of curses, his voice rising with each word. You ungrateful little bastard. After everything I've done for you, This is how you repay me? I see the pain flash across Ethan's face, and I reach out to take his hand, squeezing it gently. He looks at me, his eyes filled with gratitude, and turns back to the phone. You haven't done anything for me, Dad. You've been using me, manipulating me for your own gain, and I'm done letting you control my life. Frank scoffs, his voice dripping with disdain. You think you're so smart, don't you, Ethan? You think you can just walk away from me? From your family? Ethan's jaw clenches, and I can see the anger building in his eyes. You're not my family, Dad. Not anymore. A real family doesn't lie and cheat and steal from each other. There's a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment I think Frank might have hung up. But then his voice comes through the speaker, low and menacing. You'll regret this, Ethan. You and that bitch wife of yours. You think you can just walk away from me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. I feel a chill run down my spine at his words, but Ethan doesn't flinch. I know exactly what you're capable of, Dad. And that's why we're walking away. You can't hurt us anymore. He hangs up the phone, his hand trembling slightly as he sets it down on the table. I wrap my arms around him, holding him close as he takes a shuddering breath. I'm so proud of you, I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. You did the right thing, Ethan. You stood up to him, and you won. Ethan nods, his eyes filling with tears. I couldn't have done it without you, Zara. You gave me the strength to fight back, to take control of my life. I smile, brushing a tear from his cheek. We did it together, Ethan, and we'll keep doing it together, no matter what comes our way. The next few days are tense, as we wait for Frank to make his next move. But as the weeks pass and nothing happens, we start to relax, to settle into our new life. And then, one day, there's a knock at the door. I open it to find Olivia standing there, her face streaked with tears. I'm so sorry, Zara, she whispers, her voice trembling. I should have believed you from the start. I should have known that Dad was lying to me. I pull her into a hug, my own eyes filling with tears. It's okay, Olivia, you're here now, and that's all that matters. We spend the next few hours talking, catching up on all the time we've lost. Olivia tells us about her own struggles with Frank, about how he's been trying to turn her against us for years. But I see the truth now, she says, her voice filled with determination. And I'm not going to let him control me anymore. I'm done being his pawn. Ethan nods, his eyes shining with pride. We're in this together, Olivia. All of us. We'll stand up to him, and we'll win. As the sun sets outside our window, I feel a sense of peace wash over me. We've been through so much, Ethan and I, but we've come out stronger on the other side. And with Olivia by our side, I know that nothing can stop us now. We're a family. A real family, and we'll face whatever comes our way together. A few days later, we get another call from Frank. This time it's Olivia he's after, his voice desperate and pleading. Olivia, sweetheart, you have to help me, he begs, his words tumbling out in a rush. I'm in trouble, and I need a place to stay. You're my only hope. Olivia's face hardens, and she grips the phone tighter. No, Dad, I'm not going to help you. Not after everything you've done. Frank's voice rises, his anger palpable even through the phone. You ungrateful little brat. I raised you. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? Olivia takes a deep breath, her eyes flashing with determination. You didn't give me anything, Dad. You took from me. You manipulated me. You tried to turn me against my own brother. And I'm done letting you control my life. There's a long pause, and then Frank's voice comes through the speaker, low and menacing. You'll regret this, Olivia. You and your brother and that bitch wife of his. You think you can just turn your back on me? You have no idea what I'm capable of. But Olivia doesn't flinch. I know exactly what you're capable of, Dad, and that's why I'm saying no. You can't hurt me anymore, and you can't hurt Ethan and Zara either. We're done with you. She hangs up the phone, her hand shaking slightly as she sets it down. Ethan wraps an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. I'm so proud of you, Olivia, he says, his voice thick with emotion. You did the right thing. Olivia nods, leaning into his embrace. I couldn't have done it without you and Zara. You showed me what real love looks like, what a real family is supposed to be. I feel my own eyes fill with tears as I watch them, my heart swelling with love and pride. We've been through so much together, the three of us, but we've come out stronger on the other side. The next day, Ethan and I make a decision. We're going to use the money from the sale of the house to pay off Frank's debts, to free ourselves from his grip once and for all. We contact his creditors, explaining the situation and offering to settle his debts in full. It's not easy and it takes a big chunk out of our savings, but in the end, it's worth it. We meet with Frank one last time in a neutral location with Olivia by our side. He looks haggard, his eyes bloodshot and his clothes rumpled. "What do you want?" he asks, his voice hoarse and defeated. Ethan steps forward, his chin held high. "We're here to tell you that your debts have been paid, Dad. You're free and clear." Frank's eyes widen, and for a moment, I see a flicker of hope cross his face. But then, his expression hardens and he narrows his eyes. "What's the catch?" he asks, his voice dripping with suspicion. I step forward, my own voice steady and clear. "There is no catch, Frank. We paid off your debts because we wanted to be free of you, once and for all. But that freedom comes at a price. You're on your own now, and you'll have to find your own way in the world." Frank's face crumples, and for a moment, I almost feel sorry for him. But then I remember all the pain he's caused, all the lies he's told, and my sympathy vanishes. "You can't do this to me," he whispers, his voice breaking. "I'm your father, Ethan. You can't just abandon me." Ethan shakes his head, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "You stopped being my father the moment you chose to lie to me, to manipulate me for your own gain. And now, you have to face the consequences of your actions." We turn to leave, our hearts heavy, but our heads held high. As we walk away, I hear Frank's voice behind us, a broken whisper that tears at my heart. "I'm sorry," he says, his words barely audible. "I'm so sorry." But it's too late for apologies, too late for forgiveness. We've made our choice, and we're not looking back. Months pass, and life goes on. Ethan and I settle into our new routine, our new life together. His nonprofit takes off, and I watch with pride as he pours his heart and soul into making a difference in the world. Olivia becomes a regular fixture in our lives, stopping by for dinner and movie nights, her laughter filling our home with warmth and joy. It's like we've always been this way, a family bound by love and trust, not by blood or obligation. But even as we move forward, the shadow of Frank still lingers. Ethan tries to hide it, but I can see the pain in his eyes whenever his father's name is mentioned, the guilt that still weighs heavy on his heart. One day, I come home from work to find Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. I rush to his side, my heart pounding with worry. "What's wrong?" I ask, my voice trembling. "Is it your dad? Did something happen?" Ethan looks up at me, his eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot. "I talked to Olivia today. She said Dad's not doing well. He's living in some run-down apartment, barely getting by on Social Security. She thinks we should reach out to him, try to make amends." I feel a flare of anger at the mention of Frank, but I push it down, focusing on Ethan's pain. "What do you want to do?" I ask, my voice gentle. Ethan shakes his head, his eyes filling with tears. "I don't know, Zara. Part of me wants to help him, to be the bigger person, but another part of me is still so angry, so hurt by what he did. I don't know if I can forgive him." I take his hand in mine, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to forgive him, Ethan. What he did to you, to us, is unforgivable. But maybe you can find a way to let go of the anger, to move on with your life." Ethan nods, his jaw clenching with determination. "You're right. I need to let go, to focus on the future, not the past." We decide to reach out to Frank, to offer him a small monthly stipend to help with his expenses. It's not much, but it's a start, a way to ease the guilt that still weighs on Ethan's heart. But when we try to contact him, we're met with silence. Calls go unanswered, emails bounce back undeliverable. It's like Frank has disappeared, vanished into thin air. Weeks turn into months, and still, there's no word from him. Olivia tries to track him down, but even she comes up empty-handed. It's like he's gone, a ghost haunting the edges of our lives. And then one day, there's a knock at the door. I open it to find a man standing there, his face lined with age and sorrow. "I'm sorry to bother you," he says, his voice hesitant, "but I'm looking for Frank Johnson. I'm his landlord, and I haven't seen him in weeks. I was hoping you might know where he is." I feel a chill run down my spine at his words, a sense of dread settling in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sorry," I say, my voice shaking. "We haven't heard from Frank in months. Is everything okay?" The man shakes his head, his eyes filled with pity. I'm afraid not. Frank's apartment was a mess when I went in there. It looks like he hasn't been taking care of himself. I found a bunch of empty bottles, some pills scattered on the floor. I think he might be in trouble. I nod, my heart heavy with sorrow. Thank you for letting us know. We'll do what we can to find him, to get him the help he needs. But even as I say the words, I know it's too late. Frank is gone, lost to his own demons, his own mistakes, and all we can do is pick up the pieces to try to build a life without him. As I close the door, I feel a sense of sadness wash over me. But I also feel a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. We've been through so much, Ethan and I, but we've come out stronger on the other side. And whatever the future holds, I know we'll face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Because that's what family does. That's what love is all about.